There we go.
And we are live from Ethos Farm, Ethos Health. Fashionably late by 1 minute. I'm Dr. Ron Weiss, and I am with farmer Nora Puglisi, farm manager at Ethos Farm and Ethos Health. Thank you for joining us. Can everybody hear us? This is a sound check. Everybody, if anybody can hear us or you're within the sound of my voice, just let us know. If you have problems, let us know also by writing in.
Okay.
Okay, I can hear now. Yes. A lot of yeses. Good.
There we go.
Okay. So today's topic is about the microbiome and how the microbiome of human beings is connected to the soil and how those two interact and how the microbiome can improve our health and the impact it has on our health. So, because we are on a farm and farms are all about dirt and dirt is all about being alive, which we're going to find out from Nora in a moment. This whole scenario today in this webinar makes perfect sense to us.
Yes.
But before we get into that, I just want to ask Nora to share a little bit of her journey with us so that we can understand her perspective and how she got into farming and so on.
Okay. Well, I came to farming in more of a roundabout way. I did not grow up on a farm. I had been living in New York City and working in the film industry with my husband, and we had our first child and moved out to the suburbs of New Jersey to have a little more space and our first home. And my child was very young, and he was just really starting to eat real food. And I think up until that point, I hadn't really given it much consideration. You know, what were we eating and why were we eating it? But once I was about to put food into my baby's mouth, it really set it off, and I started to think about, what am I feeding my child? And it led me to think about the chemicals and pesticides and all of that. And at that time, you couldn't buy a lot of organic produce in a grocery store. So I decided,
early 90s, I guess.
Yeah. Right? And so I decided I would just have my own little garden in the backyard so I could grow some healthy food for us. And I started doing that. And each year my garden grew a little bigger, and discovered that I just loved growing food. So I decided to make the change. And
the accidental farmer.
The accidental farmer, exactly. And started looking into how I could become an organic farmer. And it just so happened that not far from me, about 10 minutes from where I was living at the time, through my research, I found Farmer John's Organic Produce, which was run and operated by John Canwright and his son, Mark. And John had started the first organic farm in the state of New Jersey, and he mentored many a young organic farmer. And so I went to him and asked if I could learn how to become an organic farmer. And he said, sure, come on down. So I mentored with him for 5 years. And then we moved further out west to buy my own piece of land, and I started farming my own plot of land. Did that for about 15 years, had my own CSA. When I found out about Dr. Weiss, I heard about this doctor who was buying a big farm in Long Valley, New Jersey, and he wanted to have an organic operation. And I can literally remember telling my good friend, I'm going to find that Dr. Weiss, and I'm going to become his farm manager. And it took a while, but eventually we connected, and here I am.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you did. And the amazing thread that I think connects Nora and me together is that years ago, I was at a NOFA, New Jersey winter farm conference, and I was at a lecture, and I happened to hear this amazing lecturer on seed starting, on how to start seeds in the winter in the greenhouse. And it was a very unique lecture. He was a very charismatic guy. It turned out to be your mentor.
Okay.
Yeah, Mark Canwright.
Yes.
And so I took him for my mentor. So unknowingly, we both had the same farming mentor. So let's talk a little bit about the main topic for today, which is the microbiome. It's not, when I look at the world that I am in, and then, it's a farming world, and then it's a world of health. And usually one individual is not straddling that world. So in the world of health, I know that microbiome is becoming a very hot topic, but this is also the case in its own separate world in the farming community.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let me begin by talking about it from my perspective as a doctor in the health world, and then we're going to transition into your farming world, Nora. So what is the microbiome? Well, in human terms, the microbiome are the trillions and trillions. It's thought to maybe number at least 100 trillion organisms. They're microorganisms. They're very tiny creatures that you need a microscope to see. And they inhabit us. They are on us, on every surface, and they are in us, in our gastrointestinal tract. And they're everything from fungi to viruses to bacteria. And these organisms, for many years, we knew they were there, but we really didn't think that they served a vital purpose as far as our health was concerned. Even during my medical training, I took a year of microbiology to study these organisms when I was in medical school. But there was absolutely no consideration given to what impact the denizens that live on us actually have in controlling or mediating our health. And now we find out, I would say in the past decade or so, that, and increasingly so every year, that these organisms, not only are they important, but they pretty much determine what our health will be. And it has come to the point that if you go to Google search engine and you come up with, think of a disease, any disease, it can be psoriasis, you can put in asthma, coronary artery disease, hypertension, colon cancer, so on and so forth. And if you put in that disease with gut microbiome, you will see there are thousands, every year, thousands of research studies being done that have identified that in each of these disease states, there are identifiable disruptions in the microbial or bacterial communities within our guts. And that is associated with the specific disease process that you will be looking up. So that's how important it's becoming. When I started off with plants, and before we really appreciated that the microbiome in our intestines, and by the way, I said it's on our skin too, but it's the intestinal microbiome which appears to be so crucial to these diseases I'm talking about, chronic illnesses. The skin is important too, but specifically, years ago, when I started to find out about plants and how important they were for our health, I just thought by eating plants that the plants had something magical in them that would take away our chronic diseases. But as it turns out now, after we learned about the microbiome, I no longer really look at it like that. What I look at it is the plants are the feedstocks for specific bacteria in our intestines. And so we will alter our bacterial communities based on the foods we give them. So it's really, the plants are secondary to creating those microbial communities that determine whether we are going to be healthy or not. So, after doing all that talking, I was just wondering if you have any thoughts about those microbial communities and their arrangements and the way, the importance that they have in human health, and if you can draw any lines or connections between what's going on in the soil in these communities.
Yeah, well, I think there are, a lot of parallels between the two systems, so to speak, with the microbiome being at the core to good health in the soil system, certainly, as well as the human system. I think we might be a little further along research-wise as far as microbes in the soil, but still in the early stages of just beginning to understand the role that microbes in the soil play in health. But we do know that they really are the key to healthy soil. And like human biome, we know that there are so many yet unidentified microbes in the soil, but I think the saying is that in 1 teaspoon of soil, there are as many microbes as there are humans on Earth.
Yes.
So they're there, and they're there for good reason. They are the workhorses, of our health and of soil health. They do so much work, right? The role that they play is so varied, and the relationships that they have with plants and other microbes and in soil nutrients, they're just nonstop. They're working nonstop. They're in flux nonstop. So besides doing all this amazing work, so I can go into detail about what they do, and I don't know how much detail we want, but they are doing everything that's important in the soil. And they literally start by pulling atmospheric carbon out of the atmosphere and bringing it down into the soil, where it's very effectively used. And in fact, as we all know, carbon is it's the basic building block of life. So it's really important to have it in the soil. And microbes start off by bringing it out of the atmosphere and helping plants to bring it out of the atmosphere and into the soil. They help us resist the bad microbes, which there are some. Luckily, there are many more beneficial microbes, but they are the first line of defense as far as defeating the pathogens that can make plants and humans sick.
And this topic that you bring up is particularly it's particularly useful in when we think about human beings and resistant bacteria that are in the environment, like resistant Clostridium difficile or MRSA, methicillin-resistant staph. These are bad bacteria that can be crowded out by good bacteria, right? And so you're saying now that
it's the same thing that's happening in the
if we
soil.
build in the soil, if we
Right.
build up resilient guilds and communities of these bacteria, that it can help to
Right.
remediate or keep it
Yeah,
bay
there
or
have to
control.
be enough good guys to keep the bad guys at bay. And the way we farm has a huge impact on that microbial population. They, without there are a number of farming practices that we use, especially organic farming practices, right, that are going to really increase and stabilize the microbial populations. And some of those practices that are used in conventional agriculture have the opposite effect.
Can you give us an example of a very common one, which probably we all...
Basically, right, that one of the main differences between organic and conventional agriculture is the use of chemical pesticides and herbicides. So just like the microbes in our bodies, if you use or ingest chemicals, you're going to kill off those microbes. So it is a way to kill off the bad guys, but you're killing off the good guys with them.
And when you say that, I'm thinking of Rachel Carson,
yeah,
right? And her term, she lumped insecticides, herbicides, fungicides, all these killing chemicals into just one category called biocides. Because a Bayer or Monsanto is marketing this chemical to kill, let's say, a weed, it doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't kill the bacteria in the soil.
Right.
And I think glyphosate is a good example of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
It is a potent antibacterial agent, even though
yes.
it is not sold as an antibiotic. It's sold to kill plant weeds, but its original intent was as an antibiotic.
Yeah, absolutely. And besides the microbes, can kill off the higher level life forms as well, worms and other beneficial insects. So, very detrimental to maintaining a living soil. Another way that we build our soil life is through the use of compost and cover cropping. So, when what we add to the soil matters. So we don't want to add chemicals, whether they're chemicals that are going to kill, like pesticides and herbicides. We also don't want to add chemical nutrients. We'd like our nutrients to be in a natural form, right? That is going to benefit that soil life. So compost not only is going to help sustain, but it is already enriched with millions and millions or trillions of microbes. So when we add compost, we're adding to the microbial life of the soil.
So what you're saying that is, instead of adding like Miracle Grow, which has N, P, and K in it, right? If we find these, and those are natural minerals, right? Yes. Which plants all need. But if we're getting them from a more whole source,
natural source that will subsist in the soil for a longer period, feeding the soil microbes for longer periods of time. Chemical nutrients and fertilizers are usually in higher dosage. It's almost too much food for the life in the soil at that moment. So much of it goes to waste. It leaches out, runs off into our rivers and streams and causes damage there. It's not stable. It's not a stable nutrient. And it's often not available to the plants at the time when they need them to grow.
Yeah. That you bring up another interesting point, which is in giving plants too much, let's say, of nitrogen or these essential minerals that they're not looking for or are not in a natural context. It alters the natural way by which plants grow and by which they obtain these minerals. And the way I think about it is that plants are lazy. I mean, they will, and Mother Nature is efficient. So if you give plants N, P, and K, nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, all they want, perhaps that's going to negatively affect the microbiome, these armies of bacteria and microorganisms that are marshaled to get these things for the plant and bring them to the plant, because the plant is just dosed with them.
Yes. And we do know now that plants are communicating in the soil with the microorganisms. So they are sending out their signals to the microorganisms, telling them what they need when they need it. So as a plant goes through its different stages of development, it needs different nutrients at different times. So if it's not readily available there in a usable form, which is what microbes help do, make those nutrients available to the plant, some specific microbes will literally search for those nutrients and bring them back to the roots of the plants.
Quite amazing.
It is amazing.
And I think about it, we have our own gastrointestinal tract, and human beings assemble the outside universe by swallowing it and passing it through our GI tracts. And then our GI tracts absorb it and assimilate it into our bodies. But plants, they don't have GI tracts, right? It's that workforce, that microbiome, which is an external gastrointestinal tract for them. They can actually they can go and get an atom of nitrogen. They can break, some of these microorganisms can break down more complex molecules and break it down into simpler building blocks and bring it and get it to the plant. So, and they really act like an absorptive, ingestive kind of organ for the plant.
Right. And then in effect, what happens is that those nutrients are brought towards the plant, and the plant is able to uptake them. And then the plant itself can begin making its own higher level compounds that help it to become the healthiest plant that it can be, right?
So tell us about some of these compounds and why are they so important to plants?
Well, those are the compounds, and you can talk about what those compounds do for us when we ingest them. But they're important in the plant development because they are the very compounds that not only give the plants their wonderful tastes and color and smells, which we all very much appreciate, but they also are part of the plant's defense system. Once they're making these higher level compounds, those are the compounds that help it fight off pests and disease. It's really helps to make our plants the kind of plants that we really want to eat.
So through this complex network of microorganisms, which make up the microbiome in the soil, if we foster that, then the plants have this army of workers assembling all the materials they need so that plants can make their own special compounds. And in botanical terms, we call those plant secondary metabolites. And those are the molecules that you say give that deep redness of the tomato, the aroma of, let's say,
all the things that make them attractive to us and make us
flavor,
want to eat them, the flavor.
Right. And then to me, those molecules, those are things that are potent anti-cancer agents. They prevent blood vessels from being hijacked by cancer cells. They help atherosclerotic plaques or clogs in arteries be diminished. Those kinds of molecules we kind of commandeer. Right. Human beings commandeer them as our medicines when they were originally from your plants.
Right. And so without that really healthy soil life, the plants are not going to develop their full potential. Right?
So you're saying that if I'm growing 2 tomato plants, one in a bucket of sand with some chemical fertilizers poured in there, and then one in a rich soil that was, specifically taken care of, make sure all the microorganisms are there, you're saying that we're going to get a much higher quality produce.
Yeah.
Because of that.
You will.
Living soil.
I mean, not only will it taste better and look better, but you can see it as any of you out there are gardeners. You can see the difference between a plant that is really thriving and one that is struggling, whether it's from disease and pests that are destroying it, because a weakened plant or a plant that is not getting everything it needs, it becomes susceptible to attack by those things. So you can see in your own garden when a plant is really thriving and when it's not, and you can taste the difference.
Yeah. Well, I personally find all this stuff fascinating, and I know you do. Mm-hmm. I hope our audience does. I think, why don't we see if there are a few questions we can answer now?
Sure.
And we'll do that for a little bit, and then we have a special guest star we're going to introduce to you. I know that was a little surprise for you, so hold on until the end. Right now, we're going to take some questions. So, from our assistant, does good soil health eliminate E. coli, Listeria bacteria? So I think the person asking the question probably is alluding to, in the news about every couple of times a year, or at least once a year, unfortunately, we hear about these terrible incidences where people die from eating contaminated food. And it's not necessarily meat products. And I believe in October, right, at Trader Joe's, there was a recall of romaine lettuce because it was contaminated with, I can't remember if it was Listeria. It's some bacterial contamination. So this viewer asks, can using the growing methods you're recommending by building a rich soil life, can that reduce the chance or eliminate the chance of getting bacterial food poisoning? I have my own ideas. I don't know what you think. You want me to go first? Well, there are different kinds of bacterial food poisoning that you can have. And oftentimes, some of these E. coli strains are highly virulent, resistant bacteria that have sprung out. Their origins are from conventional agriculture, right? Animal feeding lots and animal agriculture facilities that are using antibiotics all the time, other chemicals, where conditions promote the growth of these virulent and deadly bacteria. But in your world, in the world of an organic farmer who tends to the soil, those kinds of conditions really are not around.
Right. I think for the most part, those E. coli specifically, right, comes more from, it's a bacteria that's in the gut of an animal, right?
Which is being fed antibiotics all the time.
So, maintaining good standards, field standards are an important, and wash standards, all of that. Cleanliness matters greatly when it comes to those kinds of organisms.
And the other thing is that I think you made a comment before about building, and I made a connection between human health. Just because a potentially lethal bacteria is around, it doesn't mean that it has to cause a problem.
That's right.
If we have a great community surrounding it, then it's probably not going to cause a problem.
Right. Your chances are much better, right, if you have a really healthy biome that can overpower and overpopulate.
And one other thing I'm thinking about is it's the food system, right? A non-local food system also leads to these catastrophic events, right? So in a huge retailer that is getting its romaine lettuce from one facility, if that one facility gets contaminated, then many, many people across the country will suffer from that. Whereas, from a local farmer who's selling, their produce, it's not
much less likely.
It's much less likely.
Yes. Okay. I think there's another question there.
Okay. If you take an antibiotic, can you reset your microbiome? Well, yes, you can. And probably not in a good way. we're at the dawn of understanding what drugs and what kind of negative and positive effects different actors have on our microbiome in our gut. But we highly suspect, and there is evidence of that, taking antibiotics is deleterious and is harmful to our microbiome. And as a physician, I would, if somebody has microbiome disruptions, we do not address them by trying to kill off more bacteria by taking an antibiotic. One of the reasons, except for something like a pointed problem like Clostridium difficile, C. diff. And the reason why is because antibiotics tend to be broad spectrum. You don't usually have a choice in which bacteria specifically you're going to kill off. They kill off good bacteria as well as bad bacteria. So it's kind of like a crapshoot.
Well, so let me ask further. When it comes to the soil, when our microbes are depleted, we can add them back in. We use compost, we cover crop, specific methods, that we use can rebuild that population. Can we do the same for us by ingesting more microbes?
That's an excellent answer. We don't have evidence that actually taking the microbes in microbial and probiotic form can do that. Where you may be able to do it in the soil, we don't have it. It would seem intuitive that yes, you are correct, but we do not have scientific evidence that those probiotics can do that. We know that coming in contact with microbes, good microbes, and a variety of microbes from the world around us do end up populating our microbiome, but actually taking it in a pill form, we're not sure about that. So what I am sure about is that by eating whole plants, those whole plants tip and reorganize the balance of the microbial community so that you can overcome your challenges, your population challenges, and that is how these plant foods work to dispel disease. Oh, okay. So someone sends in a question about SIBO, S-I-B-O, and being vegan. So SIBO, SIBO stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And that's not a good problem to have. So throughout our GI tract, we do have bacteria everywhere, and there are different bacteria which are supposed to live in different sections of our GI tract. And when you have the wrong bacteria living in the wrong section of your GI tract, it can cause all kinds of problems. And small intestinal bacterial overgrowth refers to certain and the wrong bacterial species living in the wrong part of your intestinal tract. How did they get there?
Yeah.
Well, here's a guess. The number one selling category of drugs in the world, if you go into a pharmacy, are stomach aids, right? Stomach aids that reduce acid in our stomach, like Zantac and Pepcid and Prilosec and Nexium and Prevacid. These are blockbuster selling agents. A lot of people take them. And they shut off acid in our stomach. Why is that acid there? Mother Nature never does anything inefficiently, right? There's a reason why she put that acid there, and acid kills things. So when we are eating and bacteria is mixed in the chewed food in our mouth and we swallow that food, it goes into the stomach. That acid is supposed to kill off the bacteria that are naturally in our mouth so they do not go and populate further down our intestinal tract. And if you have reduced acid or no acid in your stomach, then you start to populate, your smaller intestine or lower intestine with the wrong bacterial species, in addition to getting bacteria that are coming from the outside world that really shouldn't be there at all. So I think that how does being vegan affect this? Well, I think that eating plants are the good bacterial species that are in our intestinal tract are designed to grow off plants. So no matter where it is in the intestinal tract, eating these plants will foster good balance and species and communities of these bacteria. Eating foods that come from animal create and foster the bacteria which are not good for our intestinal tracts, cause a lot of inflammation and secondary disease.
So again, it's like a balance, right?
It's all a balance.
And we see that especially with microbes, that it's a delicate balance. And because they are shifting and all of the time, they're dying out in the soil. There's so many of them, but they are in constant flux.
So how do you, the way I look at it, one of my prime thoughts in life with patients is how can we protect your microbiome in every patient? And that is why I almost never prescribe an antibiotic for any condition unless I'm forced to. Someone comes in, they're short of breath, they have 103-degree fevers and pneumonias on both lungs, I'm forced to. But I try not to. I try not to do it for urinary infections unless I have to. I'm very reluctant to do it. Definitely not for colds and upper respiratory infections. How do you think that way? And how can I protect those bacteria and life in the soil? And what do you do towards that end? Yeah,
well, that's the question that we're asking ourselves as farmers every day in everything we do. How am I protecting the microbes through this action, or am I harming the microbes with this action? So everything revolves around that question and that thought. So we don't use any chemicals.
Right?
So
the chemicals. I know.
We work hard not to kill off the bacteria and the fungi that are already there and thriving. And obviously, we're working just to keep them fed and reproducing. And doing the work that they do. So we don't use anything that's going to kill them off if possible. But, nature kills them off. Intense sunlight, exposed dirt, exposed land.
Can you talk a little bit about that on the concept of how not breaking the soil is a major way to protect that life?
Sure. So when you till the soil and you expose it, it's like almost like a stimulant to the microbes. They really sort of go into high gear. You also bring them up towards the surface of the soil where things like direct sunlight can affect them very negatively and kill them off. But they sort of go into high gear and they tend to sort of burn up the nutrients that are there for them, and they make all those nutrients immediately sort of available to the plants that are there. They may not need them, but it's like a little burnout. They sort of burn it out. They burn out the nutrients. They burn themselves out, and a lot of it's wasted energy. So tilling the soil is not a great thing to keep a stable soil life growing.
Now, for our non-farmers, when you say tilling, you mean not plowing, not digging the soil
Yes, not
surface.
Turning the
interrupting
soil.
it.
Right, interrupting. So, and the other thing that tillage is particularly bad about is it destroys the structure of the soil. So, and it's in that soil structure that all the good stuff happens. So a nicely structured soil allows water to drain. It allows water to be held when needed. It is space for the microbes to do their work in. And if you sort of destroy that structure through tillage, you lose all of those benefits and you lose the microbes along with it.
Hard work, right? To protect these little guys.
Yeah. Well, they're doing all the work. So it's like our job to protect them so they can do all of the great work that we need them to do.
So I'm going to let you feel this one. I have my own very strong opinions. I'm going to let you take this one first. A listener sends in a question to us about hydroponics.
Yeah, so that's a big topic right now. As some of you might be aware, hydroponic growing and having organic certification for hydroponic growing was in debate up until very recently, when the National Organic Program decided to approve hydroponic production as part of organic production.
Now, so our listeners understand, what exactly is hydroponic production?
So that's when plants are grown in water or liquid.
So no soil is
soil.
involved.
So no soil is involved in that. And so they're fed nutrients. And if it were organic production, they would be fed natural, non-chemical solutions of nutrients. And they are grown. Their whole lives are grown in that nutrient solution. There's been a big backlash. Most of the organic farmers, all that I know of, were vehemently opposed to the program adopting that policy. We know with so much life in the soil, we know the work that's going on in there. We know a small portion of that. There's so much that we don't know, but it is the absolute basis for plant health and life. So to remove soil from growing, to me, is I can't conceive of doing that, and having the plants be all that they can be. I mean, we're removing the very essence.
Yeah. I agree with you. From drawing upon my botany background, these plants evolved over millions and millions, billions of years, these special and intimate relationships with microorganisms we haven't even described yet, because we haven't discovered them, but we know they're there.
But and just to remove all of that
and put them in water with nutrients, it doesn't. I intuitively, right. Because the relationship has been broken between the plant root hairs and the armed workforce, which is these microorganisms. I can't imagine that the plant would be able to assemble itself in the same meaningful way that it would in a natural environment.
I can't either. I'm not sure of how much research is being done on that, but more is welcome.
Okay. Well, this is opinion. Nora, this one's for you. Why are Ethos vegetables, or why do you think they are superior to the ones in the grocery store?
Well, you have to come and try them and see for yourself, I would say. But, we're spending a lot of time at dedicating ourselves to all of the things we just talked about here today, to really building the soil life and the soil health. And so, that's gonna really contribute to making our plants beautiful and healthy. And to anyone who's come and shopped at the farm stand, I think they could testify to that we're growing really beautiful produce, and we work really hard.
And I know I am biased, of course, but I think the vegetables you grow are some of the best vegetables I've ever seen or tasted. Right. And they're just living. They're vibrating with color, and you can see that they're living.
Yes. And so we work every year to make the soil even better, and there's always room for growth and improvement. And I've been farming here for the last 4 or 5 years now, and each year through our efforts, mostly in our soil health efforts, we see improvement every year, and so we hope to continue that.
And pass it on to the next generation, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Speaking
of which, so we have a special young man who's here with us today, and we'd like to bring him into the picture a little bit. Andrew, it's room for another.
Hi. So I'm Andrew Patterson. I've been brought on to the Ethos team as a part of their new, they've expanded their mission to create an incubator to basically breed young farmers who believe in this type of biology, ecological based farming. So through them, I've created my own business, Jersey Natural Farm, where you can buy prepaid farm market cards on my website, jerseynaturalfarm.com. And you could come see why our vegetables are superior.
All right, so let's tell them what we're doing
Yeah.
with Andrew.
So first of all, Andrew is a graduate, right? A new graduate, graduated last year
Yes.
from Rutgers, the land grant institution, an
Yes.
excellent alma mater, Dr. Weiss and Andrew, in agricultural science.
Mm-hmm.
So
and
he's
food systems.
food systems. He has a degree in farming.
Yeah.
And
He was my assistant farmer last
Right.
season, so he worked with me throughout
Yes.
the season.
Yep.
And he was ready to take the next step, and so were we. And for us, what that means is, besides growing these incredible vegetables, we wanted to help grow some young farmers. And knowing how challenging it is for young farmers today, especially someplace like New Jersey, where land prices are so expensive, it's really almost impossible for young farmers to get started. And so we want to not only help young farmers, but we want to help them grow in the ways that we are committed to, so that that mission can spread across the state and across the country, and we can have a whole country full of regenerative, restorative, organic farmers across the country. So we've started what we're calling an incubator program, and that is where we're working with Andrew. We've brought him in. He is going to be, through his new company, farming. We've given him a couple acres of land in our growing field, and he is going to be growing the vegetables for the farm stand this year under my mentorship. So together, we will continue on with improving the soil health at Ethos and growing amazing vegetables that will be for sale in the farm stand. What else, Ron? So as part of the incubator program, not only does he get access to our land, he gets access to me and my knowledge and to our infrastructure and our equipment and all of that. And it's like it's a very low risk way for a young farmer to take that first step into farming.
Be able to start farming without taking out any loans is, unheard of. And, I'm pretty much in that position right now. So I have a chance to actually make a profit my first year, which is, for any business, it doesn't really happen. And, I feel safe. I've got people to bounce my opinions off of and ask questions and get advice and help in the field if I need it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's I'm very excited about this. I'm really looking forward to it. And, this is our first year, and hopefully it will be successful for Andrew and for us. And that is something that we'll be able to continue and expand upon in future years.
Absolutely. Yep.
What else are we? Should I, there should be in your, I'm not sure, you guys can tell me, but in your dashboard, on the offers button on your dashboard screen, can you see it?
So
there's some information there about how you can buy a prepaid farm card for the farm stand this year. We sold them last year. They were very popular. Yeah. What happens is you purchase a card, and these you can do online. You'll also be able to do them at the farm stand. But you purchase a card, you get a discount when you purchase the card, and you use your card at the farm stand for all of your purchases. It's great. I think it's really beneficial for our customers and for us. It helps for Andrew. It helps establish a basis for customers throughout the season. People who purchase the cards are people who come back week after week. So it's really helpful for Andrew and for our customers. It gives them a nice discount. So it's a way for them to enjoy our fantastic vegetables throughout the season. It's a commitment for them. It helps keeping them coming back. And it's a way to keep this incredible produce as affordable as possible.
Should we answer more questions?
I think there's one more question. Why don't we answer that? And then a listener writes in, what should we use for compost, I guess, or what should I use in the garden?
In your garden, yeah.
At the home.
Yeah. So compost is, it can be a really complex thing to try and create, but I keep thinking back to what my mentor, Farmer John, used to say, just make it. It's like, just make it. Don't worry too much about it. So, you can get as technical as you'd like, but you don't have to. You can just take the basic elements, which are organic matter, and that can come in the form of, scraps, food scraps from your kitchen table, clippings, grass clippings, and plant matter from your garden, leaves. You can use
wood chips,
manure from horses or cows if you have access to that.
And if you look around, there's all of this material is always, a lot of it is just free for the taking, and people want to get rid of it. Like the leaves, right? That people or municipalities pick them up. Or the ramial wood chips Andrew mentioned, or those are tiny little small caliber branches that like linesmen are cutting when they're trimming telephone poles or telephone lines, right? They have to dump them somewhere. Or grass clippings
just organic matter. And it's just important really to keep it aerobic, because anaerobic, you'll get a putrid pile of organic matter.
That's how you know something's not quite right.
If it smells.
If it starts to smell, it hasn't gotten the air most likely that it needs. So that's honestly, turning the pile is probably the most complicated part, and making sure.
So then scale becomes your
right.
problem.
So don't build a pile that's too big for you to manage. So make sure, and if you can only manage a certain size and then you have more material, start a second pile or a third pile or whatever, but keep it at a size that you can manage with whatever tools and equipment and time and that you have yourself.
Okay. Well, I think it's about time for us to wrap it up. And we will be having our next webinar. If you enjoyed this one, I'm talking to Jennifer. In late April, just stay tuned. We will give you the exact date, but we try to have one webinar every month. And it's going to be another exciting topic, and we'll let you know exactly what it is.
Okay, I'm going to put up on the screen some more information right now for the farm stand, prepaid cards.
So maybe the farm stand will be open when?
So June through October, June 1st through October 31st, Fridays and Saturdays, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. and Sundays, noon to 3, which is actually a new thing for Ethos. Sunday is what I would think of as National Grocery Store Day, really. So figuring we'll open it up to people who do a lot of their shopping on Sunday.
So along with the vegetables at the farm stand, we'll also have, we planted a beautiful bed of strawberries, which we'll be harvesting from this June, hopefully. So we hope you'll come and partake in some of those. We'll also have flowers and herbs, as well as
lots of greens.
And lots of greens, as per Dr. Weiss.
Yes.
Excellent. We hope to see you on the farm real soon. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.